She cleaned up messes no one else wanted to touch, night after night, for 10 years, invisible, predictable, safe. But one shift changed everything. The ER doors flew open, and the person rolling in wasn't just injured. He was running from something. He said her name, not the one on her hospital ID, the one she buried a decade ago. What happened next? Shut down the building. Lights cut, doors sealed. And suddenly, the one person everyone overlooked became the only one who could take control. Because she wasn't just a janitor. She'd once been trained to handle situations exactly like this, and now her past was walking back through every hallway. So the question is, what was she hiding, and why was someone willing to risk everything to find her? You're watching Veteran Biker, where silence hides the strongest stories. Like, if this gave you chills, subscribe to follow what really happened that night. And tell us where you're watching from, because trust us, you haven't heard the half of it. Elena Petrova had been a ghost at Central Metro Hospital for 10 years. Not in the spectral sense, but in the quiet, utterly unremarkable way that allowed her to move through its sterile corridors unseen, unheard, a master of invisibility. Her uniform was the navy blue scrubs of a janitor, her tools a mop, a bucket, and a cart perpetually laden with cleaning supplies. But beneath the faded hospital logo on her baseball cap and the streaks of grime on her face beat the heart of Captain Anya. Petrova, a woman whose hands, now accustomed to the mundane choreography of disinfection, once moved with the surgical precision of a warrior. It was 11:47 p.m., deep into the night shift, a sanctuary Elena had cultivated for a decade. The hospital at this hour was a different world. Hushed, intimate, where the bustling drama of day shift medicine gave way to the steady, almost serene rhythm of overnight healing. Elena pushed her cleaning cart down the polished linoleum floors, her comfortable sneakers making no sound. Her movements held a controlled grace, an underlying efficiency that spoke volumes to anyone observant enough to notice, hinting at a training far beyond custodial work. At 34, she was lean and compact, her dark hair always pulled back in a simple ponytail. But it was her brown eyes that truly set her apart. They held a watchfulness, a constant, involuntary scan, assess and catalogue details most people would miss. She knew the way Mark Jenkins, the new security guard, favored his left leg, probably an old injury that would slow him in a crisis. She'd noticed the slight vibration in the backup generator for 3 days now, a bearing singing its quiet protest before an inevitable failure. She could read the subtle tells distinguishing real patients from potential threats, posture, fleeting eye movements, the nervous fidget of hands. These observations were hardwired into her nervous system, a product of intensive, specialized medical training for combat zones, for operations that officially never existed. Because Elena Petrova was not her real name, it was a meticulously constructed identity, complete with a fabricated employment history, seamless references, and a backstory designed to withstand anything but the deepest, most invasive federal scrutiny. The true woman, Captain Anya Petrova, who had earned the call sign Phoenix during classified special operations paramedic duties in the unforgiving terrain of Central Asia, had, according to official records, died in a helicopter crash exactly 10 years ago. But the skills of that woman, her unparalleled ability to perform advanced trauma care and even field surgery under fire, to read tactical situations in mere seconds, to move through hostile territory like a ghost, all while keeping her team alive. Those skills lived on in the quiet janitor who cleaned trauma rooms and listened to the whispered stories in hospital corridors. The irony was a bitter, persistent tang in her mouth. She had spent years saving lives in the most dangerous places on Earth, only to find herself saving lives again in the sterile, fluorescent-lit safety of a Chicago hospital. Here, her healing came through different means, ensuring operating rooms were spotless, equipment properly sterilized, and the environment itself contributed to patient survival. It was honest work, invisible work, and it had given her something her previous life had never offered: peace. The patients flowing through Central Metro Hospital's emergency department came from every conceivable walk of life. Gang members with fresh gunshot wounds lay beside suburban mothers with kitchen accidents. Homeless veterans battled infections, while executives recovered from heart attacks. Elena had knelt to clean blood from the floors where all of them had bled, and in doing so, she had learned to see past the circumstances that brought them here, to the fundamental, vulnerable humanity they shared. Sometimes late at night, when the department grew quiet, she would find herself unconsciously studying medical procedures, her gaze intense, going far beyond casual interest. Her hands, calloused from mops and buckets, would move on their own, mimicking the precise motions of a surgeon, muscle memory surfacing from operations where she had worked feverishly to save teammates under enemy fire. Dr. Anya Sharma had noticed once, commenting with a curious smile that Elena seemed to have an unusual understanding of medical procedures for a janitor. Elena had deflected it with a quick, practiced smile and a simple story about growing up in a family of nurses, a lie woven seamlessly into her new identity. The truth, far more complicated, was that Elena had been an elite special operations paramedic before she had been anything else. Trained to provide advanced trauma care in conditions that would challenge seasoned emergency room doctors, she possessed the knowledge to perform field surgery with a knife and dental floss, set broken bones with improvised splints, and keep someone alive with whatever desperate materials were at hand. These skills had made her invaluable to her Delta Force unit, earning her the call sign Phoenix, a silent promise to rise from the ashes of any combat scenario and bring her comrades home. But that life had ended abruptly when Operation Shadowfall went sideways. Her team had been betrayed, sold out to enemy forces by someone in their own command structure. Good soldiers, true heroes, had died because of that betrayal, and Elena had been forced to disappear, to fake her own death, to avoid joining them in the grave. The official story, recorded in classified files, was that Captain Elena Petrova had perished in a helicopter crash during a training exercise. The unofficial truth, the one that haunted her every quiet night, was that she had been marked for elimination by the very same forces that had destroyed her team. Now, as she meticulously cleaned the emergency department that had become her world, Elena allowed herself to believe that the past had finally stayed buried. 10 years was a long time. People forgot. Files got archived. The wars that had shaped her had given way to new conflicts, new secrets, new betrayals. She had built a life here, not glamorous, not exciting, but undeniably hers. She finished cleaning the trauma bays and moved toward the supply closet to restock her cart. The hospital night was quiet, peaceful in the way only a hospital night could be when no major emergencies were unfolding. Dr. Anya Sharma was finishing her paperwork, the soft scratching of her pen the loudest sound. The nurses were checking on patients, their hushed whispers a gentle counterpoint to the distant hum of medical equipment. Mark Jenkins, the security guard, was making his slow, predictable rounds. Everything was normal, routine, safe. Elena had no way of knowing that 3 blocks away, a black SUV was pulling into the hospital parking lot. She couldn't see the men inside, their faces grim, checking their weapons, reviewing building schematics, confirming the identity of their primary target. She was unaware that the peaceful life she had built was about to collide violently with the past she had tried so hard to leave behind. As she loaded fresh towels into her cart, Elena felt a familiar, unsettling unease. The same sensation that had kept her alive through dozens of missions in hostile territory. It was subtle, barely perceptible, a prickling awareness but unmistakable. The feeling of being watched, of danger approaching like a storm front on a deceptively clear horizon. She paused, listening intently to the familiar sounds of the hospital at night. Everything seemed normal, utterly benign, but her instincts, honed by years of training and survival, screamed otherwise. Something was profoundly wrong, something was coming, and in that precise moment, Elena Petrova, the invisible janitor, began the irreversible transformation back into Phoenix, the warrior who had never learned how to leave anyone behind, the special operations paramedic whose very existence was a threat to a buried truth. The peace she had sought for so long was about to be shattered, but in its place, a different kind of purpose would rise, fierce and unyielding. The unease followed Elena through the remainder of her shift like a shadow she couldn't shake. She had learned long ago to trust her instincts. They had kept her alive in places where trusting the wrong person or missing the wrong signal meant death. But 10 years of peaceful routine had dulled the sharp edge of constant vigilance, blurring the lines between trained paranoia and genuine threat. She found herself questioning whether her visceral premonition was justified or simply the phantom limb sensation of a life she desperately tried to amputate. At 3:17 a.m., that haunting question was answered in the most dramatic way possible. Elena was meticulously restocking medical supplies in Trauma Bay 3, her movements precise, almost meditative, when she heard Dr. Anya Sharma's sharp intake of breath from the neighboring bay. It was a sound of shock, tightly suppressed yet unmistakable. Through the thin partition, Elena could hear the doctor speaking in rapid, urgent Spanish to a patient who had just been brought in by ambulance. The words were hauntingly familiar to Elena, not just the language, but the specific clinical medical terminology Dr. Anya Sharma was using to describe what appeared to be a severe gunshot wound. Entry wound consistent with high-velocity rifle round, Dr. Anya Sharma murmured to the attending nurse, her voice taut with urgency. Trajectory suggests the shooter was positioned at elevation, probably a rooftop. This wasn't random street violence, a tragic casualty of Chicago's ceaseless urban pulse. This was something else entirely. Elena's hands stilled on the gauze packages she was organizing. High-velocity rifle round, elevated position. The clinical description triggered memories she had worked fiercely to suppress, memories of treating similar devastating wounds in urban combat zones, of meticulously tracking sniper positions through the dust and chaos, of understanding the cold, methodical work of professional killers. She moved closer to the partition, her cleaning forgotten, every fiber of her being drawn to the unfolding drama. Through the narrow gap in the curtain, she could see the patient, a man in his 40s, Hispanic, wearing clothes that suggested he was neither wealthy nor impoverished, a civilian veneer over something harder. But it was his hands that truly arrested Elena's attention. They were scarred, calloused in specific, telling ways that spoke of weapons training and hard living. His tattoos were partially visible beneath the blood-soaked clothing clinging to his skin, and Elena recognized faded military unit insignia mixed with cryptic symbols she had learned to read during her time in special operations. This wasn't a random victim, an unfortunate passerby caught in crossfire. This was a soldier or a former soldier, and someone had tried very, very hard to kill him. "Doctor!" The patient wheezed, his voice ragged but surprisingly forceful, grabbing Dr. Anya Sharma's wrist with surprising strength. His eyes, though glazed with pain, held a frantic urgency. "They're coming tonight. The hospital. Not safe." Dr. Anya Sharma tried to calm him, her professional demeanor taking over. She assumed he was delirious from acute blood loss and profound trauma, a common symptom in such severe cases. "Sir, you need to stay calm," she reassured him, her fingers already preparing a sedative. "You're safe now. You're in the hospital." "No," the man insisted, his voice growing stronger for a fleeting moment despite his injuries, a raw warning ripping through the medical jargon. "They followed me here. They know I came here. They'll come for her." "For who?" Dr. Anya Sharma asked, her brow furrowed with confusion, but the man was already losing consciousness, the potent combination of blood loss and medication taking hold. He slumped back against the gurney, his warning fading into delirium. Elena's blood went cold. The timing was too convenient, too precise. A former soldier showing up at her hospital with a sniper wound, talking about people coming for her. In her previous life, she would have called it actionable intelligence, fragmented pieces of information that, when put together, painted a clear, terrifying picture. In her current life, she called it a death sentence arriving right on schedule. She slipped back into the supply closet, her movements now fluid, silent, devoid of the janitor's casualness. Her hand moved unerringly to a false panel hidden behind rows of sterile wipes. Inside, nestled amongst disinfectant bottles, was a secure satellite phone, ancient by current civilian standards, but still fully functional. She powered it up, the small screen flickering to life, and sent a single coded message to a number she had memorized but prayed she'd never have to call. "Phoenix 2. Ghost package compromised. Immediate extraction required." The response came back within 30 seconds, a chillingly swift confirmation of the unfolding nightmare. "Ghost to Phoenix. Negative on extraction. Too hot. Hunker down and wait for all clear." Elena stared at the phone's small screen, processing the brutal implications. Ghost was Sergeant Leo Rossi, her former teammate, the only person left in the world who knew Captain Elena Petrova was still alive. If he, a man who had navigated impossible situations, was telling her that extraction was impossible, then whatever was coming was bigger, far more extensive than a simple assassination attempt. This was a full-scale operation. She deleted the messages, wiped the phone, and returned it to its hiding place, her mind already shifting into tactical mode. The janitor was gone. Phoenix had fully reawakened. The hospital had approximately 300 people inside at this hour, patients, staff, security, and visitors. The building had multiple entry points, but the emergency department, with its constant flow of incoming patients and public access, was the most vulnerable. If someone wanted to infiltrate Central Metro Hospital while maintaining plausible cover, they would come through the ER. Elena began moving through the department with new purpose. Ostensibly continuing her cleaning routine, her mop a prop, her cart a shield, but actually conducting a rapid, comprehensive security assessment. The emergency department had two main entrances, the public entrance through the lobby and the ambulance bay, where emergency vehicles delivered patients. Both were monitored by security cameras and had card access controls, but neither would stop a determined professional. The current security staff consisted of Mark Jenkins, the overweight guard she had observed earlier, now slumped slightly at his desk, and Janet Mills, a capable but small woman whose primary experience was dealing with unruly visitors rather than armed intruders. The hospital's main security office was on the ground floor, but the emergency department relied on local presence rather than central monitoring. As she worked, Elena found herself cataloguing potential weapons and defensive positions with the automatic efficiency of her old training. Medical scissors could serve as improvised knives. Oxygen tanks could be weaponized. The heavy crash carts could provide mobile cover. The pharmaceutical lockup contained sedatives that could incapacitate an attacker if properly administered. Her mind, sharp and ruthless, was a battlefield calculator. But more than weapons, she was thinking about the people she would need to protect. Dr. Anya Sharma was brilliant and decisive, but she had no tactical training. The nurses were competent medical professionals, but they weren't prepared for violence. The patients in the emergency department included an elderly man with chest pain, a teenage girl with a broken arm, and 3 other individuals in various stages of treatment. All were vulnerable. At 4:23 a.m., Elena's grim preparations were interrupted by the arrival of another ambulance. She watched through the windows as paramedics unloaded a patient who appeared to be unconscious. But something about the scene felt profoundly wrong. The paramedics' movements were too coordinated, too military, lacking the hurried, slightly disorganized urgency of a genuine emergency crew. And the patient on the stretcher was positioned in a way that suggested he was ready to move quickly if necessary, a tactical readiness. Elena grabbed her janitor's radio and switched to the hospital's internal security frequency. Security to emergency. This is maintenance. I need someone to verify the ambulance that just arrived. License plate and crew identification. Mark Jenkins' voice crackled back through the radio, thick with annoyance. Maintenance? This is security. Why are you requesting verification on a medical transport? You got too much time on your hands, Elena. Just humor me, Elena replied, her voice calm despite the rising tension in her gut, knowing she couldn't explain her suspicions without revealing her background, without shattering the carefully constructed anonymity of Elena Petrova. A few minutes later, Jenkins's voice returned, but now it carried a distinct note of concern, even a tremor of genuine fear. Maintenance, we have a problem. That ambulance isn't in our system. The license plate comes back to a vehicle that was reported stolen 3 hours ago. Elena's suspicions crystallized into terrifying certainty. The wounded soldier hadn't been followed to the hospital as an accident. He had been chased here, probably as part of a larger, meticulously planned operation to flush out whoever he was trying to warn. And now the hunters had arrived, disguised as the very people the hospital was designed to trust, cloaked in the sanctity of emergency medical service. She moved quickly to the nurses' station and caught Dr. Anya Sharma's attention. Her gaze was direct, piercing, cutting through the doctor's fatigued haze. "Doctor, I need you to listen carefully and not ask questions. That ambulance crew that just arrived? They're not real paramedics. You need to initiate a lockdown immediately. Get everyone away from the main entrances." Dr. Anya Sharma looked at her with a mixture of confusion and growing alarm, her medical mind struggling to process the sudden impossible command. "Elena, what are you talking about? How would you possibly know that?" "Because I've seen this before," Elena said quietly, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet carrying the chilling weight of undeniable experience. "Please trust me. Lock down the department, now, before Dr. Anya Sharma could respond, before she could even fully comprehend the gravity of Elena's words. The lights in the emergency department suddenly cut out. The area plunged into a disorienting darkness, relieved only by the pale, eerie glow of emergency lighting. In that moment, in the sudden absolute silence, Elena heard the sound that confirmed her worst fears, the sound that would forever mark the end of Elena Petrova the janitor, the distinctive click of weapons being readied, echoing from multiple positions around the department, sharp and chillingly precise. The hunt had begun. The emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie blood-red glow that transformed the familiar hospital corridors into something from a nightmare. The sudden, absolute darkness had been a brutal shock, but the crimson tint that followed was a psychological weapon, painting the ordinary in the hues of danger. Elena's training kicked in immediately, her body moving with a muscle memory that had been dormant for 10 years but never forgotten. She dropped to a low crouch behind the nurse's station, pulling Dr. Anya Sharma down with her just as the first gunshots shattered the silence. The crack of the weapons was sharp, distinct, utterly unlike anything the hospital had ever known. "Stay down and don't move," Elena whispered to the terrified doctor. Her voice, usually soft, now carried an authority Dr. Anya Sharma had never heard from the quiet janitor. It was a command, not a suggestion, forged in the crucible of combat. They're professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. Through the glass doors of the emergency department, Elena could see muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness of the main lobby. The fake paramedics had shed their medical disguises with ruthless efficiency, their movements now fluid and aggressive. They were moving through the hospital with military precision, their weapons sweeping in coordinated patterns that spoke of extensive tactical training. Elena counted at least 6 shooters, possibly more, their dark silhouettes blurring against the red-tinged gloom. They wore black tactical gear, form-fitting and practical, and moved with the silent coordination of a unit that had worked together countless times before. This wasn't a random attack or a desperate robbery gone wrong. This was a professional operation with specific, cold objectives. "Elena," Dr. Anya Sharma whispered, her voice barely a breath, shaking with a terror that was utterly alien to her composed professional demeanor. "What's happening? Who are these people?" "People who shouldn't be here," Elena replied, her eyes tracking the synchronized movements of the gunmen through the red-tinted darkness, analyzing angles, anticipating their next move, and they're looking for someone specific. The wounded soldier from earlier, Sergeant Leo Rossi, had been right. They had followed him here. But Elena was beginning to suspect that Sergeant Leo Rossi hadn't been the primary target. He had been bait, designed to draw someone else into the open. Someone who had been invisible for 10 years, but whose skills would be unmistakable once revealed. One of the gunmen approached the nurse's station, his weapon raised and ready, moving with the slow, deliberate confidence of a predator. Elena could see his face clearly now in the flickering emergency light, young, maybe late 22nds, with the cold, dead eyes of someone who had killed before and would kill again without hesitation. He was scanning the area methodically, looking for targets or threats, his weapon sweeping in tight, controlled arcs. Elena made a split-second decision that would change everything. As the gunman rounded the corner of the nurse's station, she moved with lightning speed, grabbing a heavy medical cart. It wasn't the cleaning cart, but a crash cart, packed with life-saving equipment, its weight considerable. She shoved it directly into his path with unexpected force. He stumbled momentarily, thrown off balance by the sudden, unexpected obstacle. Elena used that instant, that fraction of a second of disorientation, to disarm him with a move that was pure Special Forces training. A precise strike to his wrist, aimed at a nerve cluster, caused him to drop his weapon with a clatter, followed by a chokehold that left him unconscious in less than 10 seconds. Dr. Anya Sharma stared in utter shock as Elena quickly searched the unconscious gunman, her hands moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. She removed his radio, his backup weapon, and his tactical gear, her senses already processing the weight and feel of military-grade equipment. "Jesus Christ!" Dr. Anya Sharma breathed, her voice a ragged whisper. "Who are you?" "I'm someone trying to keep you alive," Elena replied, checking the gunman's radio for any intelligence. The terse, professional chatter she heard confirmed her worst fears. This was a multi-team operation. with specific objectives and intricate extraction plans. Then, a voice crackled through the radio, crisp and chillingly clear. Target confirmed in the building. Phoenix is active. Repeat. Phoenix is active. Elena's blood went cold. They knew her call sign. They knew exactly who they were hunting. She grabbed Dr. Anya Sharma by the arm and pulled her toward the medical supply room. "We need to get the patients and staff to safety." "How many people are in the department right now?" 8 patients, 6 staff members, Dr. Anya Sharma replied automatically, her medical training helping her function despite the terror. "Elena, I don't understand what's happening. I'll explain later. Right now we need to evacuate everyone to the most secure area of the hospital." "Where's the safest place?" Dr. Anya Sharma thought quickly, her medical mind assessing the hospital structure. "The surgical suite on the 3rd floor. It's reinforced, has its own security systems, and there's only one way in." "Good. We're going to move everyone there, but we need to do it without being detected." Elena checked the unconscious gunman's weapon, a military-grade assault rifle with modifications that weren't available to civilians. "How well do you know the hospital's layout?" "Service corridors, maintenance passages, ways to move people without using the main hallways." Dr. Anya Sharma nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Better than anyone. I've worked here for 6 years. There's a freight elevator that connects to the service corridors. It goes directly to the surgical floor." Elena smiled grimly. "Perfect. Here's what we're going to do." Over the next 20 minutes, Elena orchestrated an evacuation that would have impressed her old Special Forces instructors. Using Dr. Anya Sharma's intimate knowledge of the hospital's labyrinthine passages and her own tactical special operations paramedic expertise, they moved the patients and staff through a maze of service corridors and maintenance passages, avoiding the gunmen who were systematically searching the main areas of the hospital. The elderly man with chest pain was carefully transported on a gurney, with Elena and a nurse working together to keep his IV line stable during the movement. The teenage girl with the broken arm, her initial fear replaced by a fierce determination to be useful, helped support another patient who was too weak to walk alone. Dr. Anya Sharma led the group, using her calm medical authority to keep everyone focused amidst the underlying tension. But as they reached the freight elevator, Elena heard something that made her stomach drop, the distinctive whir of helicopter blades approaching the hospital, growing steadily louder. She grabbed the radio she had taken from the unconscious gunman and listened to the tactical chatter. "Overwatch is in position," a voice reported. "All exits are covered. No one gets out until the primary objective is achieved." "Copy that," came the chilling response. "Continue sweep of floors 1 through 5. Target is contained but not secured." Elena realized that the situation had just become exponentially more dangerous. This wasn't just a hit squad. It was a full-scale military operation with air support and perimeter control. Someone had committed serious resources to finding her, which meant that whatever she knew or represented was worth killing dozens of innocent people to obtain. As the freight elevator rose toward the surgical floor, Elena made a decision that went against every instinct that had kept her alive for the past 10 years. Instead of continuing to hide, instead of trying to escape, she was going to fight back. Too many innocent people were in danger, and she was the only one with the skills to protect them. "Dr. Sharma," she said quietly as the elevator climbed, her voice now flat, devoid of negotiation. "Once we get everyone secured, I need you to do exactly what I tell you. Can you handle that?" The doctor looked at her with a mixture of fear and dawning determination. "Elena, whoever you really are, these people came here because of you, didn't they?" Elena nodded, her gaze hardening. "Yes. And I'm going to make sure they regret it." The elevator reached the 3rd floor, and Elena began the process of transforming from invisible janitor to the warrior she had once been. The hospital had become a battlefield, and Phoenix was about to remind everyone why that call sign had once struck fear into the hearts of America's enemies. But first, she had to make sure that the innocent people under her protection would survive what was coming next. The surgical suite on the third floor of Central Metro Hospital had been designed as a sterile sanctuary where life and death decisions were made with precision and skill. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose, as a fortress where a former special operations paramedic would make her last stand against an enemy that had hunted her across 10 years and half a continent. Elena moved through the surgical suite with the confidence of someone who belonged there, quickly assessing the space for defensive advantages. The reinforced doors could be secured from the inside. The surgical instruments, though designed for healing, could serve as makeshift weapons if necessary. Most importantly, the suite had its own communication system that bypassed the hospital's main network, a crucial advantage. "Everyone stay calm and quiet," Elena announced to the group of patients and staff she had evacuated. Her voice was firm, commanding, yet held a calming certainty. "We're going to be here for a while, but you're safe as long as you follow my instructions." Dr. Anya Sharma pulled Elena aside, her voice urgent but controlled. "I need answers right now. Those men downstairs, they're not random criminals. They knew your name, your call sign, and you handled that gunman like you'd done it 1,000 times before. Who are you?" Elena looked at the doctor for a long moment, weighing how much truth she could reveal without putting everyone in greater danger. The time for pretense was over. "My real name is Captain Elena Petrova. 10 years ago, I was a special operations paramedic with Delta Force. My call sign was Phoenix. Officially, I died in a helicopter crash during a training exercise. Unofficially, I was marked for elimination because I knew too much about operations that were supposed to stay buried." Dr. Anya Sharma processed this information with the same analytical precision she brought to medical diagnosis. Her mind, trained for critical situations, quickly pieced together the fragments. "And now they found you." "Not just found me," Elena corrected, a grim set to her jaw. "They've committed serious resources to eliminating me, military contractors, air support, perimeter control. This isn't about revenge or tying up loose ends. This is about something bigger." Before Dr. Anya Sharma could respond, the surgical suite's communication system crackled to life. A voice that Elena recognized with a chill of dread filled the room, amplified and distorted, yet unmistakably familiar. "Anya Petrova, call sign Phoenix. This is General Viktor Volkov. I know you can hear me." Elena's hands clenched into fists, her blood running cold. It was the officer who had betrayed Operation Shadowfall, who had sold out her team for career advancement and classified information. The man she had thought was dead, rotting in some nameless hell. "You've caused me considerable inconvenience over the years," Volkov continued, his voice carrying the smooth, predatory confidence of someone who believed he held all the advantages. "But tonight, that ends. You have something I need, and I have something you care about: innocent lives." Elena moved to the communication panel and keyed the microphone, her voice steady, burning with controlled fury. "Volkov, I should have known you were too much of a coward to die with the rest of the team you betrayed." "Ah, there's the Phoenix I remember," Volkov sneered back, his voice oozing condescension. Always so direct, so moral. "It was that inflexibility that made you a liability then, and it's what's going to get you killed now. What do you want?" "You know what I want. The files from Operation Shadowfall, the evidence you collected before everything went sideways. I know you didn't die in that helicopter crash. You're too stubborn to die that easily. And I know you kept insurance documentation that could implicate certain individuals and activities that were necessary for national security. Elena felt a cold realization settle over her. The files, encrypted drives containing evidence of Volkov's betrayal, records of illegal operations, financial transactions that proved the scope of the corruption within their command structure. She had hidden them 10 years ago as insurance, a desperate measure, never imagining they would become the focus of a full-scale military operation. "I don't have any files," she lied smoothly, her poker face honed by years of deception. Volkov's laughter echoed through the surgical suite, harsh and triumphant. "Oh, Phoenix, we both know that's not true. Sergeant Leo Rossi was quite informative before he died. He told us about your insurance policy, about the dead man's switch you set up to release everything if something happened to you." Elena's world tilted, the floor beneath her feet swaying. Sergeant Leo Rossi was dead, her last link to her former life. The only person who knew she was alive had been murdered by the same man who had destroyed her team 10 years ago. "When?" she asked quietly, her voice a ragged whisper. "3 days ago," Volkov replied with chilling indifference. "He lasted longer than expected. Delta Force are tough that way, but eventually everyone breaks. He told us about your little hideout, about the hospital where you've been playing janitor, about the encrypted files you've been keeping as insurance." Dr. Anya Sharma watched Elena's face transform, seeing something cold and dangerously resolute replace the controlled calm that had characterized her actions so far. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was personal. "Here's my offer," Volkov continued, his voice regaining its smooth confidence. "You give me the location of those files, and I'll make sure the hospital staff and patients survive this encounter. You try to be a hero, and I'll turn this place into a war zone. My men have already secured the building. There's no escape, no rescue coming. Just you, me, and a choice." Elena looked around the surgical suite at the faces of the people she had sworn to protect. Dr. Anya Sharma, whose only crime had been working the night shift, the elderly man with chest pain who reminded her of her grandfather, the teenage girl with the broken arm who couldn't be more than 17, her eyes wide with fear. "I need time to think," she said into the microphone, her voice betraying none of the turmoil raging within her. "You have 10 minutes, Volkov granted, his voice sharp. "After that, I start killing hostages." The communication went dead, leaving the surgical suite in tense, unbearable silence. Elena stood motionless for a moment, her mind racing through tactical options and strategic possibilities. Everyone in the room was looking at her, waiting for her to somehow solve an impossible situation. Dr. Anya Sharma approached her cautiously. "Elena, what are these files? What's so important that someone would do all this?" "Evidence of war crimes," Elena replied simply, her gaze hard. "Proof that Volkov and others in our command structure were running illegal operations, selling weapons to enemies, getting American soldiers killed for profit. The files could bring down careers and administrations, maybe even prevent future operations like the one that killed my team. And you've been keeping them secret for 10 years as insurance. If Volkov or his people ever found me, the files would be automatically released to journalists and congressional oversight committees. It was supposed to keep me safe." Dr. Anya Sharma nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "But now he's calling your bluff." "No," Elena said, moving to one of the surgical instrument trays and selecting a scalpel with practiced precision. Its cold, sharp edge felt familiar in her grasp. "He just made the mistake of thinking I was bluffing." She turned to face the group, and for the first time since the crisis began, she allowed them to see exactly who she really was. Not Elena Petrova, the janitor, but Phoenix, the soldier who had earned her call sign by never losing a patient, never leaving anyone behind, and never backing down from a fight. "Dr. Sharma, I need you to prepare the surgical suite for emergency procedures. We're going to have casualties before this is over." What are you going to do?" Elena checked the scalpel's edge, testing its balance with the automatic precision of someone who had used such instruments to save lives and, when necessary, to take them. "I'm going to remind General Viktor Volkov why they called me Phoenix, and why that was the last name his enemies ever heard. The 10 minutes that General Viktor Volkov had given her felt both eternal and instantaneous. Elena used every second, every fiber of her being, to transform the surgical suite into something that would have made her old Delta Force instructors proud, a defensive position that maximized her advantages while ruthlessly minimizing the enemy's options for assault. Working with Dr. Anya Sharma, Elena repositioned the heavy surgical tables, turning them into formidable barricades that offered both cover and clear fields of fire. The elderly patient with chest pain was moved to the safest, most shielded corner of the suite, his IV lines carefully maintained by one of the nurses who, amidst the terror, had found an astonishing reservoir of courage. The teenage girl with the broken arm, her face still pale with shock, was helping to organize medical supplies. Fear replaced by a fierce determination to be useful, her young hands surprisingly steady as she handed instruments to the medical staff. "Elena?" Dr. Anya Sharma said quietly, her voice barely a whisper as they worked, the frantic energy of their preparations a stark contrast to the doctor's calm demeanor. "If these files are so important, why don't you just give him what he wants? Maybe he'll let everyone go." The question hung in the air, laden with a desperate civilian logic. Elena paused in her preparation, her hands resting momentarily on a stainless steel instrument tray. She looked at the doctor with eyes that held 10 years of hard-earned wisdom forged in the crucible of betrayal and survival. "Because Volkov never lets anyone go, Doctor. He didn't become a general by leaving loose ends alive. The moment I give him those files, everyone in this room becomes a liability." Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a cold statement of fact. She moved to the surgical suite's computer terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a familiarity that startled Dr. Anya Sharma. "What are you doing?" the doctor asked, her medical training not extending to advanced cybersecurity. "Evening the odds," Elena replied, accessing the hospital's intricate building management system. Her movements were precise, confident, bypassing security protocols with techniques that were definitely not part of a janitor's training manual. "Volkov thinks he has all the advantages, numbers, weapons, air support, but he's fighting on my turf now." Under Elena's command, the hospital's environmental controls came alive. She began systematically shutting down elevators, sealing fire doors throughout strategic sections of the hospital, and redirecting airflow patterns in ways that would confuse and disorient anyone trying to navigate the building without her intimate knowledge. 10 years of working every night shift at Central Metro Hospital had given her an almost symbiotic understanding of every system, every shortcut, every hidden vulnerability of the sprawling complex. More importantly, with a series of rapid keystrokes, she activated the hospital's emergency medical protocols, sending automatic distress signals to police, fire, and federal agencies. Volkov might have the building surrounded, but he couldn't control every radio frequency or block every emergency transmission. The digital breadcrumbs were already leading a trail directly to him. The communication system crackled back to life exactly 10 minutes after Volkov's ultimatum had begun. "Time's up, Phoenix." Volkov's voice filled the suite, chillingly calm. "I hope you've made the right choice." Elena keyed the microphone, her voice carrying a calm authority that made everyone in the surgical suite stand a little straighter, a collective surge of unexpected courage rippling through the huddled group. "Volkov, I've got a counteroffer for you. I'm listening." Volkov's voice was tight with anticipation. "You and your men leave the hospital immediately. take your helicopters, your tactical gear, and your delusions of competence and disappear. In exchange, I won't kill every last one of you." The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds, a vast electronic void. Then Volkov's laughter filled the room, harsh and derisive. "Anya, you always did have more courage than sense, but you're outnumbered 20-1, trapped in a room with civilians and facing professional soldiers with military-grade equipment. 20-1! Elena's voice carried a note of amusement, chillingly cold, that sent a shiver down the spines of everyone who heard it. "Volkov, you brought 20 men to kill one janitor. I'm almost flattered. Give me the location of the files or I start executing hostages." "The files are in a safety deposit box in Zurich, Switzerland." Elena lied smoothly, weaving half-truths with calculated deceptions. "The key is hidden in my apartment." "But here's the thing, Volkov. Even if you get them, you'll never make it out of Chicago alive." "Why is that?" Volkov's voice was laced with a dangerous curiosity. Elena smiled, a grim, battle-hardened expression that replaced the janitor's quiet demeanor. Dr. Anya Sharma saw something in that expression that reminded her why this woman had once been considered one of the military's most dangerous operators. "Because while you've been hunting me, I've been documenting you. Every communication you've made tonight, every tactical decision, every violation of federal law, it's all been recorded and transmitted to some very interested parties." This was partially true. Elena had indeed been recording Volkov's communications and transmitting them through encrypted channels. But the real trap she was setting was far more subtle and infinitely more dangerous. "You're bluffing," Volkov said, but his voice carried less conviction than before, a hint of unease creeping in. "Am I? Check your secure communications, Volkov. I think you'll find some very interesting messages waiting for you." There was a pause, followed by the sound of urgent radio chatter in the background of Volkov's transmission. Elena had used her access to the hospital's communication systems to flood Volkov's tactical frequencies with false information, creating confusion and doubt within his team. More importantly, she had transmitted Volkov's real-time location and operational details to contacts within federal law enforcement agencies, contacts who didn't know Captain Elena Petrova was alive, but who had been tracking Volkov's illegal activities for years. Clever Volkov admitted, his voice tight with controlled anger, but ultimately pointless. "Even if law enforcement responds, they'll find only the aftermath of a terrorist attack on a hospital. You and everyone with you will be dead, and I'll be long gone." "That's where you're wrong, Volkov. You made one critical mistake, which is you assumed I was hiding in this surgical suite because I was trapped, but I'm not hiding from you anymore." Elena moved to the surgical suite's ventilation grate, removing it with tools she had retrieved from her janitor's cart, tools that had always been on her cart but never used for their intended purpose. Behind the grate was a maintenance shaft that connected to the hospital's extensive ductwork system, a system she had mapped and memorized during 10 years of routine maintenance work. "Dr. Sharma," she said quietly, her voice firm, "lock this door behind me and don't open it for anyone except federal agents with proper identification. Keep everyone safe." "Where are you going?" Dr. Anya Sharma asked, her eyes wide. Elena checked the scalpel she had selected earlier, testing its balance with the practiced motion of someone who had used such instruments for far more than surgery. "I'm going hunting." She paused at the entrance to the maintenance shaft, looking back at the people she had sworn to protect. The elderly man with chest pain was sitting up, his color improved, a frail but determined observer. The teenage girl was helping the nurses organize supplies with quiet efficiency, her young resilience already adapting to the extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Anya Sharma was checking on the other patients with the calm professionalism that made her such an excellent trauma surgeon. These were good people, innocent people who deserved to live through the night, and Elena was going to make sure they did, no matter what it cost her. "Volkov," she said into the communication system one final time, her voice echoing with cold promise. "You wanted Phoenix. You're about to get her." She disappeared into the ventilation shaft, moving through the darkness with the silent efficiency of someone who had spent years moving through hostile territory. Behind her, the surgical suite sealed itself like a fortress. Ahead of her, Volkov's men were spread throughout the hospital, confident in their numbers and firepower. But they were about to learn that numbers and firepower meant nothing when you were being hunted by someone who knew every inch of the battlefield, who had been trained to turn hospitals into healing places and, when necessary, into killing grounds. Captain Elena Petrova, call sign Phoenix, was no longer hiding. She was hunting, and Volkov's men were about to discover why the enemies of America's special forces learned to fear that particular call sign, usually in the last moments of their lives. The hospital had become a maze, and Elena was the predator moving through its corridors, carrying 10 years of suppressed rage and the skills to use it with surgical precision. Moving through the hospital's ventilation system was like traveling through the circulatory system of a living organism. Elena had spent countless hours during her 10 years as a janitor, learning every duct, every passage, every maintenance corridor that connected the building's various sections. What had once been routine knowledge for cleaning and repairs now became tactical intelligence for urban warfare. The ductwork carried sound with surprising clarity, allowing her to track Volkov's men as they moved through the hospital below. Their radio chatter revealed a methodical search pattern, professional, coordinated, but predictable. They were clearing rooms floor by floor, assuming their target was hiding rather than hunting. As she crawled through the narrow passage above the second floor, Elena allowed herself to remember Operation Shadowfall for the first time in years, the mission that had destroyed her old life and created the woman she had become. It had been a simple assignment, at least on paper. Her team, 8 Special Forces operators, including herself, had been tasked with extracting a high-value intelligence asset from a compound in the mountains of Central Asia. The asset, Sergei Belov, claimed to have evidence of arms trafficking between American military contractors and hostile foreign governments. Information that could prevent weapons from reaching terrorist organizations. What they hadn't known was that General Viktor Volkov, their commanding officer, was one of the primary subjects of that intelligence. The asset they were risking their lives to extract had evidence that Volkov was selling American military technology to the highest bidder, regardless of their intentions toward the United States. The mission had been a setup from the beginning. Volkov had sent them into a trap, hoping that the loss of the entire team would be explained as a tragic operational failure. The enemy forces had been waiting, positioned with a precision that could only have come from detailed operational intelligence. Elena's team had fought their way out of the initial ambush, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. One by one, her teammates had fallen. Ramirez, the explosives expert; Chen, the communication specialist; Davies, the sniper, whose accuracy had saved them on a dozen previous missions. Each death had been a piece of Elena's soul torn away. Each loss was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. Sergeant Leo Rossi had been with her at the end, helping her extract the intelligence asset while the rest of their team held off enemy forces. They had made it to the extraction point only to discover that their helicopter support had been cancelled. No backup, no rescue, no acknowledgement that they had ever existed. The intelligence asset, Sergei Belov, a former contractor, had given Elena the encrypted files containing evidence of Volkov's betrayal before he died from wounds sustained during the extraction. Elena and Sergeant Leo Rossi had been the only survivors, and they had made a pact. They would disappear, keep the evidence safe, and wait for the right moment to expose the truth. Sergeant Leo Rossi had taken a new identity and continued gathering intelligence on Volkov's network. Elena had become a ghost, hiding in plain sight while maintaining the files that could bring down everyone involved in the conspiracy. For 10 years it had worked, until Volkov found Sergeant Leo Rossi and tortured him for information, until tonight, when the past had finally caught up with her in the sterile corridors of Central Metro Hospital. Elena paused in her movement through the ductwork, listening to the radio chatter below. Volkov's men were systematic but overconfident, moving with the arrogance of professionals who had never faced an opponent with her particular combination of skills and motivation. Team 2, report status. Volkov's voice crackled through their communications. Second floor clear. No sign of the target. Team 3, first floor secured. Emergency department is under our control. Elena smiled grimly. They were treating this like a standard search and destroy operation, assuming their target would behave like a typical fugitive, hiding, running, waiting for rescue. They had no idea they were dealing with someone who had been trained to turn the hunter into the hunted. She reached a ventilation grate that opened into a supply closet on the second floor. Through the slats, she could see 2 of Volkov's men positioned in the hallway, their weapons ready, but their attention focused on the rooms they were systematically clearing. Elena removed the grate with practiced silence, dropping into the supply closet with movements that made no sound. The closet contained medical supplies, cleaning equipment, and, most importantly, access to the hospital's internal communication system. She activated her janitor's radio, switching to the frequency that Volkov's teams were monitoring. When she spoke, her voice carried the cold authority of someone who had operated in the darkest corners of modern warfare. Volkov, this is Phoenix. Remember Operation Shadowfall? Remember how your intelligence was always so accurate? That wasn't luck. That was betrayal. The radio chatter stopped immediately, replaced by tense silence. You sold out Ramirez when he got too close to your arms-dealing network. You marked Chen for elimination when he started asking questions about off-books funding. Davies died because you gave the enemy his exact position. Maria! Volkov's voice came back, carefully controlled but carrying an undertone of barely suppressed anger. You're talking about classified operations that officially never happened. Just like tonight officially isn't happening, Elena countered, her voice ice-cold. Just like Sergeant Leo Rossi officially didn't die screaming your name 3 days ago. Elena moved to the supply closet door, listening to the footsteps of Volkov's men as they responded to their commander's orders. They were converging on her position, but she was already 3 moves ahead. You know what I learned during Shadowfall, Volkov? I learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one shooting at you from the front. It's the one giving orders from a command center, selling out his own people for profit. She opened the supply closet door and stepped into the hallway directly behind one of Volkov's men. The scalpel moved with surgical precision, finding the gap between his body armor and helmet, applying pressure to a nerve cluster that dropped him unconscious without a sound. But tonight's different, Volkov. Tonight you're not giving orders from a safe distance. You're here, in my hospital, threatening my people. And that means I can finally give you what you've deserved for 10 years. The second gunman spun around at the sound of his partner hitting the floor, but Elena was already moving. She disarmed him with a technique that would have been familiar to any special forces operator, a precise combination of leverage and momentum that left him weaponless and unconscious in under 5 seconds. Team 2. Report. Volkov's voice was sharp with concern. Team 2, respond! Elena keyed the radio one final time before discarding it. Volkov, you trained me to be a weapon. You taught me to eliminate threats to American security. Congratulations, you've become one. She gathered the weapons and equipment from the two unconscious men, military-grade assault rifles, tactical radios, flashbang grenades, and enough ammunition for a small war. But more than weapons, she now had something even more valuable, confirmation that Volkov's men were using standard military tactics and equipment. That meant they would be predictable, following protocols she knew as well as they did. Better in some cases, since she had helped develop some of the urban warfare protocols they were using. Elena disappeared back into the hospital's maze of corridors and maintenance passages, but now she was no longer just evading capture. She was implementing a plan that would systematically dismantle Volkov's operation, eliminate his tactical advantages, and force him into a confrontation where her knowledge of the hospital would matter more than his superior numbers. Operation Shadowfall had ended with betrayal and death 10 years ago. Tonight, in the corridors of Central Metro Hospital, it would finally reach its conclusion, and this time, Elena intended to make sure that the only ghost remaining would be the memory of General Viktor Volkov. General Viktor Volkov's voice, now laced with barely controlled fury, ripped through the hospital's communication system. "All teams converge on the second floor. Target is armed and extremely dangerous. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Shoot to kill." Elena listened intently from her position, a maintenance corridor nestled between the second and third floors. Through the faint crackle of radio static, she meticulously tracked the movement of Volkov's men. They were abandoning their methodical search patterns, their formations breaking into a more aggressive, yet ultimately predictable convergence. It was exactly what she had anticipated, and precisely what she had planned for. Professional soldiers were trained to follow established protocols, to respond to threats according to fixed procedures, but Elena had helped write some of those very procedures. More importantly, she understood their psychological limitations. Aggression often trumped tactical adaptation when fear and frustration mounted. She moved through the service corridors with a silent efficiency that belied the building's age, using her intimate knowledge of the hospital's layout to stay one step ahead of the converging teams. Her goal was not merely avoidance, but strategic positioning for the next phase of her operation, turning Volkov's tactical advantages against him. Her first objective was the pharmaceutical storage room on the second floor. It was secured behind reinforced doors and electronic locks, designed to prevent drug theft, a formidable barrier for anyone without the right access. But for Elena, who had spent 10 years meticulously maintaining every system in this hospital, from HVAC to security, the locks were merely an inconvenience. Inside, bathed in the cool, sterile light, she found exactly what she needed. Powerful sedatives like propofol and midazolam. Her special operations paramedic training had included extensive study of chemical agents and their tactical applications. Knowledge considered illicit for a civilian, but invaluable in a combat zone, or, as it turned out, a besieged hospital. Working with the swift, precise movements of someone who had performed similar improvisations under dire combat conditions, Elena prepared several specialized, non-lethal devices. She used syringes, small discrete oxygen canisters, and the carefully measured pharmaceutical compounds, transforming them into tools that could incapacitate targets with surgical precision without causing permanent harm. This was a crucial distinction, separating her methods from Volkov's brutal willingness to eliminate innocent civilians. As she worked, Volkov's voice continued its desperate echo through the hospital's communication system. "Anya, you're only delaying the inevitable. My men will find you, and when they do, Everyone you've tried to protect will pay the price for your stubbornness. Elena keyed the pharmaceutical storage room's internal communication panel, her voice cutting through Volkov's bluster, sharp and resolute. "Volkov, let me tell you what's really going to happen. In about 30 minutes, federal agents are going to arrive in response to the emergency signals I've been transmitting. They're going to find undeniable evidence of your illegal operation, recordings of your admissions to war crimes, and irrefutable documentation of tonight's assault on a civilian hospital. Even if that's true, you'll be dead long before then," Volkov countered, his voice dripping with venom, yet a hint of genuine unease now present. "Maybe," Elena conceded, a chilling calm in her tone, "but here's what you haven't figured out yet. I'm not trying to survive this, Volkov. I'm trying to make sure you don't." The silence that followed her transmission stretched for nearly a minute, a vast electronic void. When Volkov spoke again, his voice carried a distinct note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. "What are you talking about?" "The files from Operation Shadowfall." Elena's voice was a whisper of cold steel, utterly devoid of any pretense. "They're not in a safety deposit box in Zurich. They're here, in this hospital, uploaded to servers that are programmed to release everything if I don't check in every 12 hours. If you kill me, the evidence goes public automatically." This was the profound truth Elena had kept hidden for 10 years. The encrypted files containing meticulous evidence of Volkov's deep-rooted betrayal weren't stored in some distant, unassailable location. They were integrated into the hospital's own sprawling computer systems, ingeniously disguised as routine maintenance logs and mundane patient records. She had spent years carefully documenting Volkov's illicit activities, adding new evidence whenever she could access it through encrypted channels, meticulously weaving a digital web of undeniable truth around him. "You're bluffing," Volkov asserted, but his voice now carried less conviction, a distinct tremor of doubt audible to Elena's trained ears. "Am I?" "Check the hospital's medical database, Volkov," Elena challenged. "Look for maintenance records filed under the name Sergei Belov. You remember Sergei, don't you? The intelligence asset you tried to have killed 10 years ago." There was a pause, then the frantic sound of urgent typing in the background of Volkov's transmission. Elena knew he was accessing the hospital's computer systems, desperately trying to verify her claims. What he would find was a carefully constructed digital trail, meticulously designed to lead him to realize the terrifying scope of her preparation and the trap she had laid. "Clever," Volkov admitted after several minutes, his voice tight with controlled anger. "But you've made one crucial mistake, which is you've told me where the files are located. All I have to do is destroy the hospital's computer systems, and your insurance policy disappears." Elena smiled grimly as she finished preparing her last improvised weapon, securing it to her belt. "Volkov, you always were better at tactics than strategy. Go ahead. Destroy the hospital's computers, shut down life support systems, erase patient records, eliminate the digital infrastructure that keeps 300 innocent people alive. See how that plays with federal investigators, with the media, with the American public." The communication went silent, a stark, ringing emptiness. Elena knew she had backed Volkov into an impossible position. He desperately needed the files to protect himself from prosecution, but he couldn't destroy them without committing an act of domestic terrorism that would publicly guarantee his downfall and ignite an even fiercer federal pursuit. More than that, she had forced him to reveal his true priorities. Volkov wasn't here to eliminate a security threat or protect classified information. He was here, desperate to save his own skin, and that raw personal desperation would make him sloppy, vulnerable. Elena left the pharmaceutical storage room, her movements now imbued with a deadly purpose, and began moving toward the hospital's central corridor system. She had weapons, ingeniously crafted from medical supplies. She had Volkov psychologically off balance, his strategic mind clouded by panic. And she had an intimate, unparalleled knowledge of the battlefield, Central Metro Hospital. But most importantly, she had something that Volkov's men utterly lacked, a cause worth dying for. The people sheltered in the surgical suite weren't just civilians to protect, they were representatives of everything she had joined the military to defend. Dr. Anya Sharma, who dedicated her life to healing others, the elderly man with chest pain who reminded her of every veteran she had served alongside. The teenage girl with the broken arm who represented the future that people like Volkov were so willing to sacrifice for personal gain. This was not just a mission, it was a personal crusade. As she moved through the hospital's corridors, Elena's radio crackled with reports from Volkov's teams. They had found the unconscious men she had left on the second floor. They were adapting their search patterns, becoming more cautious, more systematic, but also, paradoxically, becoming more predictable. Professional soldiers followed training, and Elena knew their training as well as they did. Better. In some cases, she had helped develop the very urban warfare protocols they were now using. "Team leaders, report positions!" Volkov ordered through the radio, his voice strained with a thinly veiled desperation. Team 1, 3rd floor East Wing. Team 2, 2nd floor Central. Team 3, 1st floor West Wing. Elena processed their positions with lightning speed, calculating movement patterns and response times, identifying choke points and flanking opportunities. Volkov had made another mistake. He was keeping his teams too close together, reducing their search coverage while inadvertently creating perfect opportunities for her to eliminate multiple targets simultaneously. She keyed her radio one final time before discarding it entirely. "Volkov, you have 15 minutes to evacuate your men and leave the hospital." "Or what?" Volkov's voice was a low snarl, laced with a mix of fury and dawning fear. "Or you find out why they called me Phoenix." Elena's voice was clear, cold and utterly unwavering, and why that was the last thing a lot of people heard before they stopped breathing. Elena disappeared into the hospital's ventilation system, carrying her improvised weapons and 10 years of suppressed rage and tactical brilliance. Behind her, Volkov's men were converging on her last known position, a chaotic mass responding to a phantom threat. Ahead of her, the central corridor system offered multiple opportunities for tactical engagement. The hunt was about to become a battle, a final desperate clash. And Elena intended to make sure that when it was over, the only people walking out of Central Metro Hospital would be the ones who deserved to survive. Justice would be hers, delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a warrior reborn. As the first faint sirens wailed in the distance, growing steadily louder, Elena made her way back to the surgical suite where Dr. Anya Sharma and the other civilians were sheltering. The oppressive atmosphere of danger was already beginning to lift, replaced by the chaotic sounds of approaching law enforcement and the distant rhythmic thud of military helicopters landing outside. The hospital's normal lighting and communication systems, which Elena had strategically manipulated, flickered back to life, banishing the eerie red glow and restoring a semblance of normalcy. She found Dr. Anya Sharma checking on the patients with her usual professional competence, her hands steady, her movements precise. But the doctor's eyes showed the profound strain of the night's events, still wide with a lingering shock. The elderly man with chest pain was stable, his cardiac rhythms normal despite the terrifying ordeal. The teenage girl with the broken arm was helping the nurses organize medical supplies with quiet efficiency, her young resilience already adapting to the extraordinary circumstances that had unfolded. "Is it over?" Dr. Anya Sharma asked quietly, her voice hoarse, looking up as Elena entered the suite. "It's over," Elena confirmed, her gaze steady, offering a rare, tired smile. "Federal agents will be here within the hour. Volkov is unconscious but alive, and his men are either neutralized or have fled. And you, Doctor?" Anya Sharma pressed, her eyes searching Elena's face, trying to piece together the fragments of the extraordinary woman she had witnessed. "What happens to Elena Petrova, the janitor?" Elena's smile faded, replaced by a touch of sadness. "Elena Petrova never really existed, Doctor. She was just a cover story, a way for someone else to hide from a past that finally caught up with her." Dr. Anya Sharma studied her face in the pale surgical lighting, understanding slowly dawning. "So, who are you really?" "Someone who spent 10 years learning that running from the truth doesn't make it go away," Elena replied softly, her voice filled with a quiet resolution. "Someone who discovered that the best way to honor the dead is to make sure their deaths weren't meaningless." Over the next several hours, Central Metro Hospital was transformed into a bustling federal crime scene. Investigators from multiple agencies, FBI, DIA, and various military criminal investigation units, began the painstaking process of documenting Volkov's operation and gathering evidence of the broader conspiracy. Elena found herself at the center of debriefings that would continue for weeks, providing meticulous testimony that would be crucial for prosecuting not just Volkov, but the entire treacherous network he had been protecting. The encrypted files she had so cleverly hidden within the hospital's computer systems were meticulously extracted and analyzed. They revealed a chilling web of financial transactions, operational communications, and strategic plans that implicated dozens of individuals across military contracting firms, foreign intelligence services, and even high-level government oversight positions. This was not just a local corruption, it was a systemic rot. General Viktor Volkov himself, when he eventually regained consciousness, proved to be surprisingly cooperative once he realized the overwhelming scope of the evidence against him. Faced with charges that could result in life imprisonment or even execution for treason, he agreed to provide testimony against his CO conspirators in exchange for a plea agreement that would spare his life. The investigation that followed would ultimately expose corruption networks operating in multiple countries, result in the arrest of more than 40 individuals, and lead to significant reforms in military contracting procedures designed to prevent similar betrayals in the future. But for Elena, the most profound and important outcome was far simpler, far more personal. The 8 Delta Force team members who had died during Operation Shadowfall were finally, officially, recognized as heroes who had given their lives in selfless service of American national security. Their names, once buried in classified reports, were added to national memorials. Their families, who had lived with unanswered questions and denied benefits, received proper recognition and long overdue support, and their sacrifice, once officially disavowed, was acknowledged by the very government that had denied their existence for so long. 3 months after the harrowing events at Central Metro Hospital, Captain Anya Petrova received a presidential commendation for her pivotal role in exposing the conspiracy and preventing continued threats to national security. She accepted the award in a private, unpublicized ceremony, away from media attention that could compromise ongoing investigations. But far more meaningful than the commendation itself was a letter she received shortly after. A fragile handwritten note from Sergeant Leo Rossi's mother, thanking her for ensuring that her son's death had meaning and that his killers would finally face justice. This tangible connection to the lives she had sought to honor brought a deep sense of peace that no medal ever could. Elena returned to Chicago after the ceremony, but not to Central Metro Hospital. The building, despite the justice that had emerged from its darkness, held too many raw memories of violence and betrayal. Instead, she found new purpose, new work at a veterans medical center on the south side of the city. Here, she provided care for soldiers who had returned from the same kinds of operations that had once defined her life, offering them not just medical attention, but a silent, profound understanding forged in shared sacrifice. She was no longer invisible, but she was finally at peace. The woman who had spent 10 years hiding from her past had learned a fundamental truth. The only way to truly escape the shadows was to shine light into them, no matter how much it hurt to see what had been hidden there. In the quiet corridors of the Veterans Medical Center, Captain Elena Petrova, no longer Phoenix the soldier, no longer Elena Petrova the janitor, but simply someone who had learned that healing and fighting were sometimes the same thing, continued the work of saving lives one patient at a time, building a legacy not of secrecy but of profound compassion and unwavering justice. What an incredible journey we've witnessed today, from the quiet obscurity of a hospital's night shift to the intense heart of a federal investigation. Elena Miller's story is a powerful reminder that true strength often lies hidden, waiting for the moment to emerge. A path marked by a decade of misplaced guilt and relentless dedication ultimately reshaped not just her own life, but the very future of military readiness and the pursuit of justice. Elena's transformation from a solitary janitor to an architect of profound change shows us that service isn't always about grand gestures on the battlefield. Sometimes it's about the quiet pursuit of excellence in the shadows, the courage to confront painful truths, and the unwavering willingness to share your unique gifts to uplift others. It's about finding redemption, not by erasing the past, but by building a better future upon its hard-earned lessons. Her journey reminds us that even after suffering betrayal and loss, the human spirit possesses an extraordinary capacity for resilience and purpose. The intricate web of corruption that Elena exposed, painstakingly documented during her years of hidden vigilance, highlights the critical importance of integrity at every level. It underscores that true national security is not just defended by soldiers on the front lines, but also by those who fight for truth and accountability, often unseen. Elena's meticulous nature, honed by both her medical training and her janitorial routine, became the unexpected weapon that brought down a vast criminal network, demonstrating that precision, patience, and an unwavering moral compass can dismantle even the most entrenched deceit. Her ultimate choice to work at a veterans medical center rather than retreating back into isolation or embracing a high-profile military role speaks volumes about her character. It shows a profound commitment to healing, not just the physical wounds of war, but the deeper, often invisible scars that veterans carry. This final chapter in her story is a testament to the fact that personal healing can lead to profound public service, and that the greatest victories are sometimes found in the quiet acts of compassion and understanding. This is Veteran Biker, and we believe every hidden talent, every act of quiet defiance against injustice, and every step towards healing has the power to make a difference. If Elena's incredible story resonated with you, if it sparked something within you about resilience, justice, or the true meaning of service, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us bring more inspiring tales of courage, transformation, and unwavering purpose to light. What did you take away from Elena's extraordinary journey? Did it change your perspective on what it means to be a hero? We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights in the comments below. And don't stop here. We have 2 more standout stories waiting for you right now on your screen. Just click and check them out. Thank you for watching. And remember, the greatest transformations often begin in the most unexpected places, brought to life by the most unassuming individuals.